Welcome to Your County on Community 7 Television. I'm Schutz Wies and I'm your host. Each month we look at a different aspect of what's going on in Yellowstone County. It's been a crazy few months here in Yellowstone County for sure. We are able to get into the studio with some great social distancing and a lot of hand sanitizing. So this month we're able to have Commissioner Dennis Pitman in the studio with us. Commissioner Pitman, thanks so much for coming in to visit with us about what's going on in Yellowstone County.
It's good to start a little bit of physical interaction here.
Right, absolutely. Although we're still, we've got lots of room. We've got lots of room, but we can be in the same room together.
Absolutely.
So thanks for doing it.
Absolutely.
I'm sure the topic that's on probably everybody's mind, and it's going to be on everybody's mind for a long time, is the COVID-19 and the pandemic. And
For sure.
I'm sure it's been keeping you guys as commissioners pretty busy. So kind of give us your history. Give us your background.
Yeah.
How'd this start? What'd you guys do? How'd you do planning? And just walk us through that the whole situation.
Yeah, so, from the very beginning as this started breaking, we were trying to figure it out. And DES, the Disaster Emergency Services, they have a manual that they can open up, and a flood, a fire, whatever. Well, we opened up the book to pandemics, and guess what? There was nothing there. and so we're like, what do we do? Yeah. Fortunately, we had just last year hired Casey Williams as our emergency and disaster and emergency services director. And he came for us from Alabama, or Arkansas, I mean, and had a lot of experience with FEMA and disasters. And so he started compiling how we should approach this. And following the federal guidelines that were starting to come out just rapidly. I mean, it was rapid fire, what we should or shouldn't be doing. Then the state started changing things. And so we'd write what we think we were supposed to be doing, and then the next day there'd be a press conference and change everything again. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden we had to start figuring out what John Felton's role was going to be in this. What was his authority? What was his legal authority versus what could or couldn't be done? And so all of that had to be worked out, and it had to be worked out quickly because some people thought we were in charge, some people thought John Felton or the governor, or who are we taking our direction from? And so that became, what was that structure going to look like? And so we were writing the book as we were living it. And that's probably an important thing because right off the bat I came out and said, look, you gotta understand, we're not playing by any normal playbook. We're going to make some mistakes. We're going to make we're not going to do this perfectly, but understand that as we go forward, we're trying to take the best advice at that moment and move forward from there. And as we learn things, we're going to adjust. So what I tell you today may change tomorrow. It doesn't mean that I was wrong. We're just changing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so that became an important part of it. Became real important right off the bat as we started realizing that this wasn't just a medical issue, that this was going to start impacting a lot of different parts of our society. We had never shut down our community in the way that we shut down. And so we started looking at all the different points. So we needed our hospitals, we needed fire and emergency services, we needed a lot of different departments.
Sure.
And within that, we started realizing right off the bat that we were going to need an economic branch because this was going to be huge, and we didn't know what this was going to look like. And so we thought, well, this is the perfect reason why Big Sky EDA exists. Mm-hmm. They do a lot of great things all the other times, but now was the time we needed them hitting the ground and being the business representative at the table. And so we activated that. Then the Continuum of Care group came and said, well, what do we do about the vulnerable, the mentally ill, the homeless, the people that are now shut in and isolated even more? And so bringing all these people to the table to have a voice. And that became significant because it was a way of, if you have a fire, you don't bring all of those people. You come in, you put out a fire, you leave. We started realizing right off the bat that this was going to be a long-term thing. This wasn't going to be over in a month or 2 months, that as we keep seeing the information come out, this is 2, 3, 4 months, 6 months, a year. What are we going to do? And so bringing all these people and making sure that we had the techniques to do this. KC brought the idea that everything needed to be documented. So from, I think within the first week, we were asking people to be filling out forms. And that sounded kind of strange to a lot of people. Why do I need this paperwork? Well, we needed documentation that here's what shutting things down was going to look like and what it was going to do to impact businesses, families, that kind of thing. And that's how you get reimbursed from FEMA. At the same time, we financially are trying to figure out how this works because there's the emergency 2 mills that the state requires.
Sure.
And we're like, okay, where do we come up with that money?
Yeah.
And so KC was like, well, there's some other issues in which we can use facilities as in kind towards that 2% for the FEMA requirement and things like that. So basically we started figuring out how to utilize Metro Park, how to use that facility, what were the needs going to be in the community, trying to listen to the hospitals. You got to remember when we first started this was to protect the hospitals and the overflow and the capacity, because really what we were anticipating is if this spiked too fast and too hard, while you may have survived COVID, if you and I were having a heart attack at the same time that all of the ICU and everything was busy, we could easily have died just as a result of that. So there was a whole nother layer that we were trying to figure out, how do you protect? And so all of that was going on. At the same time, and I don't know about you, but I had never heard the word Zoom in my life as far as a Zoom meeting or anything else. And we were trying to figure out, how do you keep government functioning? How do you operate? And especially with Montana and open meeting laws and right to participate, how are we going to continue to function and yet stay open to the public? And the crash courses I had on Zoom were just phenomenal. I mean, we had a few glitches the first few meetings, but we're actually getting pretty darn good at it and finding a new opportunity, a way to communicate with people to let them see what's going on.
So I know that it is important that you guys have open meetings and that people can attend. And I know that at one point you couldn't attend a meeting electronically. Did that have to change during this pandemic, or had that changed already prior to the pandemic happening?
No, this is all stuff that started transpiring, and we had to start seeking legal opinions right off the bat, saying, okay, can we hold an electronic meeting?
Right.
Can you call in? And some of the boards didn't have where you could call in. We actually, as far as the commissioners, had a thing where you could, had a policy that allowed for you to call in and be there by phone. So electronically, this was something easy for us. Some of the departments and other, like the city, I think, had to adjust some of theirs because you can't call. So
that was a local regulation that, and you
Just
could adjust the
the
local regulation to say, yep, these meetings can be held electronically.
Right. The issue started becoming, it's not just to let the public see what you're doing. That's only part of our requirement.
Yeah.
They have to be able to participate.
Sure.
And we're like, well, then how do you do that?
Yeah.
And not understanding Zoom. At one point, we opened up Zoom to everybody. You know, here, and we put out the number, and you want to join our meeting, come in through Zoom. And then all of the Zoom bombing started and things like that.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, how do we keep control of a meeting, let people observe the meeting, and then participate? And so then we came up with the phone number. So we do things similar to, we were watching the city, and the city was watching us on how we did this.
Sure.
And we were learning from each other. And it ended up that the compromise for securing the meeting was that I have the master controls at mine, so I can mute and unmute and all of that.
Yeah.
But then we had a phone number people could call in if they were watching it.
Yeah.
You know, one of the next phases we're talking about is it streams obviously on Community 7 when we do our meetings, but we don't even do our work sessions or our discussions on that level.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, we had that discussion today at our meeting. Maybe we start streaming it out to Facebook.
Sure.
So at least people can see it and then understand what we're doing. Because what I'm finding is people are just desperate for information. And they're at home. And everybody's getting really good at these meetings, and they're going through Facebook and they see the city council's live, or now maybe the commissioners are going to be live, and you may not even want to participate, but it's good to hear the information. What are we talking about? What are the issues that are going on?
All right. So also, as the function of Yellowstone County functioning, were all Yellowstone County employees? Did they have to come work? Did they have to telework? Did some of them, were some of them furloughed or laid off? Talk to us about Yellowstone County's workforce.
Yeah, that ended up being another. I mean, this was everything learning on the fly. What was, people were using the word essential versus non-essential, and I really hated that term because really every employee we have is essential. But but what jobs were essential? What were things that had to keep going on, if nothing else, by the state law, that they had to keep happening? You know, there's certain things. The treasurer's office had to be open. We had to be open. There's just offices that the state constitution says they actually tell us when we can close or not. So without that order, we had to stay open. But then we had to start going, okay, without violating people's rights, what are the policies going to be? And it was nice that some of the federal policies came in and gave who had to be where and what was going to be the compensation. And then we had to start scrambling for working from home and finding out, trying to respect our employees who were immune compromised or health compromised. Really wasn't my job to go asking every employee. If they said they just didn't feel comfortable, we were saying, well, let's see if there's a way you can work from home. What else can we do? Can we put up shields? Can we lock the doors? Can we make appointments? And what can we do? And so all of those things were happening at the same time. And we had employees that I was so impressed because they hunkered down, and most of our staff that could stayed at their posts and did their jobs. And the ones that felt concerned and could still perform most of their job, we let them go home and remote work.
Okay.
And that really worked actually amazingly well.
Yeah. Let's talk about some specific departments. Ones that come to mind to me. District Court. How did District Court, I mean, that seems like that it just screams in person, right? That you go to court and there's an attorney there and there's a juror there and there's a judge there and all of that stuff. How did District Court function during this time and probably continues to function?
So it obviously scaled down dramatically. They started canceling all the in-person jury trials and stuff like that, or postponing them for now. So we know that there's a backlog. And then on top of that, we just backlogged another 3 months worth of hearings. The good thing that started happening out of all of this is the communication through television, through Zoom, through electronic means. We were already doing that so that we weren't bringing prisoners, people into jail and doing it that way. Yeah. What we started being able to realize is the judges could contact people on their phones. So they could call somebody and actually have some type of a conversation with them or a pleading or whatever and do some things electronically. And that's opened up a whole new world that we really didn't know 6 months ago. That's what's so strange about this is you think about it. 6 months ago, we would never have had this conversation. It just was still, we have to be in person, we have to do this. And now we're starting to realize whether it be telemedicine, telepsych, justice.
Right.
These things are effective ways of getting things done where we don't necessarily have to be face-to-face. That's always been the tradition, but finding out that this might be a better way of actually doing it in the long run anyway. And so they work through that.
Yeah. Let's talk about the jail. I know there was a couple of, I believe, employees down there who ended up testing positive. What kind of things went in place down there, and kind of how did Yellowstone County Jail work through the pandemic and continues to work through the pandemic?
So because of construction delays and issues, we actually ended up in a perfect storm, and in a good way, because we still had an entire pod that was down, and so the district courts released about 100 people out of the jail, which reduced our population, and then we were able to start spreading them out a little more around. So we actually then went into the pod that was actually just getting completed and isolate that, so that if we did have some people that weren't feeling well or we needed to isolate, we had a place where they could go. And so that ended up being a good scenario.
Sure.
So by the population being down, spreading people out, giving our staff that flexibility and making sure they had the PPEs and they had the masks and the gloves and things like that to protect them as well, we were able to do that and very successfully. And in the process actually expand some of our renovation within the jail. So on top of all of that, we threw in remodeling of booking and added an administration area to the jail. It's kind of, and I keep comparing it to the Metro. Yeah. You know, there's usually you don't get opportunities where there's downtime. Yeah. We actually seize this downtime and having people there to get some more things done quickly.
All right. Let's jump to Metro then, since you brought it up there. I know it's been a busy facility. Yeah. It's probably as troublesome a facility for Yellowstone County right now as you have in your inventory right now. because it was built for large gatherings. That is what its main focus is,
Right.
is to have large gatherings, and that is going to be the very last thing that we're going to get to see here. So,
Right.
talk about what Metro's been being used for, how you guys have planned for it, and what do you see as the future of Metro Park, and is it going to
3 minutes to do all of it?
Yeah, exactly. Is it going to get back to what it once was?
Sure.
Do you see that happening in the next year or two?
Sure. So with Metro Park, obviously it's an enterprise fund. It's even the fair itself is a third of the budget for Metro Park. We get about $2 million in taxpayer money every year to subsidize and help that go along. Yeah, this became another huge concern of ours because 3 months ago we were talking tearing down the grandstands, the master plan, remodeling the facilities, what we were going to look like going into the next 20, 30 years without a pandemic as part of the plan. Now, actually, even this is part of the plan because we had to start calculating things. So how many people can fit in Metro Park at 36 square feet a person right now?
I don't know.
Okay, you could get about 10,000 in before.
Yeah.
If we have to stick to the 36 square foot rule, about 2,500 people.
Yeah.
That isn't even break even on any concert, on any possibility. So we're starting to engage all of the entertainers and things. What are their expectations are going to be? What are their requirements going to be? Is it different type of filtration? Is it disinfecting? Are people going to have to wear masks? What are going to be the requirements? We started looking at, 6 months ago it was magtrometers, where people going to have to be, everybody was starting to be scanned to get into Metro Park. Now we're looking at devices that remotely scan your temperature, as well as whether you have a metal on, but do you have a temperature?
Yeah.
And should that be something we be testing for? And then what is going to be the policy? If Schutz comes in and has a fever, pull him aside. Does he have to be checked by medics to be cleared or prevented from going in? Those are a million other little issues that we're dealing with. What are the acts going to require before they'll even step foot in the facility? We just had our meeting on Metro Park Advisory Board here at lunchtime and talking about most of the acts are 6 months, 12 months, 18 months out before they're going to even start going back out on tour.
Sure. Yeah.
And because you can't just come to Billings and do it. You have to be part of a circuit.
Yeah.
And if the whole United States isn't opened up, then they're not going to be able to pull these people and pull off the concerts. So what did we do at Metro Park? From the very beginning, we opened up the Sandstone building as a place to collect donations. Initially, it was actually going to be set up as a remote testing site. The hospitals didn't want to have, the anticipation was there were going to be hundreds of thousands of people wanting to be tested. They didn't want them in their facility, so at one point we were looking that was going to be the remote testing site for COVID-19. Ended up becoming our donation site where we could gather things together and disperse the personal protective equipment from that location. Shortly right after that, within a week, we realized that we had a population, whether it's you're homeless or the people that are traveling that need to isolate but can't afford necessarily to be in a hotel or something, but they've shown symptoms. We didn't know what that was going to look like. So we set up the pavilion with 10-foot cubicles on both sides, those tested and waiting results, and then the other side was if you tested positive and needed to isolate, you were going to go over to the other side. The nice part about that was there was no real technical physical writing checks. It was providing facilities, but that also was going to help us with our FEMA contribution. So all of these places have rent that they would normally be generating. And so we're like, at this point, we set up an emergency services budget, and so Metro Park is billing DES for the use of these facilities. DES is taking all these invoices, will compile them, and then submit them to FEMA for reimbursement. And it was about a month ago, General Quinn gave us a call and said, really however this is going to play out over the next 6 months to a couple of years, what we want to do is come in and use the expo and design a medical facility that would handle the overflow of recovering patients from the hospitals that were non-COVID but still needed medical attention.
Sure.
And that would be able to service and be mobile throughout the entire state. And we need a facility to set it up, design it, and then tear it down and package it back up.
Yeah.
And so we started looking at that, and the National Guard coming in and doing that. We came up with a contract. They're renting the expo right now. They built a 90-bed facility. And so within that, the important thing for people isn't that we necessarily needed it right now, but within a week, if we make the phone call, within a week, that place can be up and operational at the expo. The other key thing about it is they're going to be in modules. So they designed it knowing that the gymnasiums throughout eastern Montana. So let's say Sydney needs 20 beds.
Yeah.
Their hospital's overwhelmed. Before they come to Billings, what if we could just set up a mobile hospital at the gymnasium at the school?
Yeah.
They can load out a couple of these containers, take them there, set them up in the gymnasium, and have a functioning facility there.
All right.
So we know they'll probably come to Billings, and that's why Metro Park is always the central location. But if we can actually prevent that by keeping people closer to their homes, even better.
Well, Dennis, I know you've lived here a long time. You've been involved in all kinds of things. Certainly not a pandemic before.
Yeah.
So what have you learned about Yellowstone County that you didn't know before?
Oh, man. Not that I didn't know it, but it just showed that we really have some good people.
Yeah.
They care about not only themselves, but other businesses. It just reinstated me I'm in the right place.
Yeah.
To see people stepping up and helping small business owners, the restaurant people, doing their takeout, doing that kind of thing has just been amazing. The compassion of people, understanding and the patience of people has been amazing. It's just, I don't know, I kind of get overwhelmed about it because it really is. Billings has some really amazing and good people.
Sure. And again, this is certainly a unique time. So I'm going to ask you a question that's a bit of a downer, but I promise we'll come back up.
Okay.
So what have been the most difficult moments over the last couple of months as someone who's sat in a commissioner's chair?
Yeah, I think some of the difficult things have been the social isolation. Whether you're dealing with mental health issues or just that we're social people, though that not being able to encounter each other is huge. It really, I think, showed how we are social, how we need contact, we need to talk to people, we need to see people and touch people. And that being taken away has been a real strain on everybody.
Sure. What have been some of the best moments over the last couple of months that you've encountered sitting with the Yellowstone County Commission?
So I'm an electronic geek. So I think some of the best moments have been our Zoom meetings.
Sure.
We've had meetings where on an average day, there might be 1 or 2 people that show up to our meeting. To get on a Zoom meeting and see 40, 50, 60 people checking into your meeting was like, wow, people are engaged and wanting to find out what's going on within their local government and their elected officials, and engaged in seeing how this all works and what was going to be happening, and them having compassion with us and understanding that we were trying to figure this out at the same time as everybody else.
Sure. Have you noticed an increase in the number of people who are getting a hold of you outside of the meetings? And do you think that's kind of a result of the fact that more people are just watching the meetings?
No, actually, I think the contact is pretty much the same, but the content is a little more direct.
Sure.
I think as this goes on, people are getting a civics lesson. They're like, well, how did we get here?
Right.
You know, a basic question will be how did John Felton get the power that he has?
Yeah.
And you've got, different political people questioning this, and I'm like, we ask the same question.
Yeah.
And if you look at it civically, well, the legislature gave authority to the commissioners gave authority to a health board, the health board gave authority to John Felton. Yeah. And it's all in statute and it's all in law. Yeah. And I tell people all the time, if you don't like the way this played out, then run for the legislature, or deal with this, or at least understand the process. It wasn't that one person just became the ultimate authority magically. Yeah. That there was a system in place, and there's a reason for that system, and it actually has worked very well.
All right. I'm not going to hold you to anything, but kind of give us your thoughts, feelings. What do you see coming over the next couple of months? I guess probably on the one hand, if we keep seeing a decrease or very minimal amount of cases, or on the other hand, okay, that spike hits and we're right back in the middle of this. So
Right.
kind of give us two scenarios and we won't hold you to any of them.
Well, you know, I say every day is a new day, because the minute I say this, the governor's going to speak this afternoon, and who knows?
Right.
We could be in stage 2 in a week, 2 weeks. He might say a month. Who knows? And that's probably our frustration is we have to wait. And so I know that this afternoon becomes busy because we start making decisions based on what comes down from the state. That being said, I think I'm hoping by the 1st of June that we're probably into stage 2, which is a lot less restrictions. I think once people get over the getting out, then we'll start behaving better. But it's kind of like anybody that's been cooped up for a while. Everybody's got to get out, and then sometimes we forget our social manners and things like that. I think we'll get that corrected over the summer. And then as we go into the fall, really this is going to be day by day, week by week. Even at this point, if we start seeing an uprise in infections or things like that, we're expecting it. I don't think it's anything that's going to overwhelm us now. I think we've spread this out long enough that even if it does, it's going to be a very quick spike and down. And we'll have to just adjust. And we've got the facilities, we've got the safety net of the hospital beds now. We've got things in place to deal with it, which we didn't have even 3 months ago. So I think at this point, the reassurance to people and to businesses that I don't see us going backwards. I see we've put in enough things in place that we can adjust. We understand sort of what we're facing, and that we'll get through this. Right. And we don't necessarily have to shut down everything, and that we're understanding and respecting people that are comfortable with it or not comfortable. And I think as long as we keep that perspective and respect that we're not all at the same place, that some of us have more anxiety than others, some of us are more concerned, some of us are more susceptible. And it's not up for me to decide how fragile your immune system is. Yeah. And part of that's your responsibility to stay away from these environments, or if you're willing and wanting to go out and talk to people, then that's great.
All right. Well, Commissioner Pitman, thanks for coming in and visiting with us. I know it's been an interesting couple of months
Absolutely.
for you guys, and I know it's been a lot of hard work. I'm sure a lot of anxious moments. Thank you for all you and the other commissioners have done, and I know Yellowstone County staff has worked really hard through this also. We appreciate all your guys' hard work in keeping us safe.
It's been a pleasure.
All right, thanks.